Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Expanse Abridged Podcast series. Today we're on chapter 17, which is a Holden chapter, and the last we saw Holden and the boys, his gang, they were in the Donager, the big Martian warship, and they just escaped after all those Marines were dying for them, all those red shirts, and they escaped, and then a big man called Fred said, "Boys, come to me, I've got a place to hide." And they decided they were kind of weighing that one up, and they were thinking about it. And we kind of return to Holden now in this chapter. It's all about kind of setting the scene of them getting used to their new ship and kind of setting it into almost like a family life, which is very cute. So yeah, the chapter opens with Holden making coffee, because as we've discussed before and is present throughout all 9 books, Holden fucking loves a good brew, which is also why I like him so much, because there's nothing better than nice coffee in the morning. And he's found a machine that can make coffee in 0G, or in under 5G, and it can make 40 cups in less than 5 minutes. So he's very happy, and he has to stop himself from stroking the machine as it's making it. And he's watching the team kind of make all their meals, make some food, and kind of chilling out. And he says a sense of peace and safety deep enough to leave him lightheaded. He's very happy. It's the first time in months, basically, since I've had to leave the Canterbury and all the various shenanigans have been going on. He says no one was demanding anything of them. And as far as people were concerned, they didn't even know they existed, because the ship doesn't have a transponder on. That happened at the end of last chapter, when I think Alex turned it off on the way out, so no one even knows they escaped. No one knows. They assume they went down with the ship, and it's like they're just perfect. They're just chilling out. They kind of set the table up. They've got some hummus and some flatbreads, and they all kind of stare at it for a little bit, until Amos says, "I'm hungry as a fucking bear. Pass me that pepper." And everyone eats so much, and it's described Holden as stuffing in his mouth until his mouth is hurting. He hasn't even got enough saliva to chew it properly, but he just wants to eat it. Because obviously at this point they've spent months on protein bars and various bland things in space as they've escaped from... They were on the little shuttle after they left the Canterbury, then with the Martians and stuff. They've been eating like shite, and they're very happy now. And afterwards, everyone's kind of sat there, monging out, enjoying all their food. And it says, Naomi gave Holden a sleepy look through half-lidded eyes that was suddenly sexy as hell. Holden squashed that thought and raised his mug. Because obviously we're getting that thing going. I think we had it a couple chapters ago, or a couple Holden chapters ago, the first bit of Holden thinking Naomi's fit. And she is described as fit in the books. But we're seeing it again here. They do a little toast to the Marines and to Shed, so the various people that have died, kind of get them here. And then Holden kind of turns the conversation towards their ship, which they're very chuffed with. And we kind of go through the crew one by one, roughly. So Alex is saying how it's amazing to fly, it's so quick, it purrs like a kitten. Amos is complaining it's too clean. He's a grease monkey, or self-professed one. So he wants it nice and dirty, things to fix, and he's like, no, the ship's too clean. Naomi's like, it's amazing, it's so advanced. It's got amazing showers, because obviously none of the other ships, they all have baby wipes, I think. This one's got the best shower she's ever seen, and a really, really good medical bay, which she admits they should have used in Amos, because obviously they fixed Amos last chapter after he like broke his arm and stuff, but he's saying you did a good enough job. I think they had to do it kind of where he passed out with pain. There was a big description, I remember talking about it. Then they kind of keep going through the ship. Holden's happy his hair doesn't feel like grease when he touches it. And they're talking about the ship is fully stocked up. It's got fuel for 30 years. There's full of water. And it's got 20 long-range torpedo tubes. And the cannons as well are full. Apart from the little bit of ammunition Alex used to kill those guys as they were escaping. And the point defense cannons they're either used for like close combat in space terms or to shoot down missiles. And they've also got a big box of normal guns, just human-sized guns. That is a mobile assault package. And so Holden kind of sits back and goes, okay, boys, we've got one of the best like drives, like the engines in the universe, because it's like the high-end Martian frigate. And as we discussed at the very start, Mars has the best technology. We've got weapons for days, and we've got fuel for days, and we've got food for days. What do you want to do? He says he's pretty tempted to go speak to Colonel Johnson. So that's Frederick Johnson, who reached out to them last time, who runs Tycho Station. And they kind of go around the team again in this order, which is quite cute, this chapter. It's very much like Holden does something, then we go 1, 2, 3. This is the third time it's happened as well. And he kind of goes, team, what do you think? Amos is like, fuck yeah, I'll be a revolutionary for a bit. Why not? We get a nice little exchange as well, where Naomi goes, Earthman's burden, Amos? He says, what the fuck does that even mean? And Naomi replies, nothing, just teasing. I know you like our side because you just want to steal our women. And Amos smiles, realizes it's a joke, and goes, "Well, you ladies do have the legs that go all the way up." Obviously, these belters being tall, these tall belters, all of them being like plus 6 foot with the low gravity, so it makes them very, very sexy and leggy. Which apparently that's what Amos likes. But Amos likes anything that moves because he's a boy. So, and that does come up in later chapters. And then Alex is like, "Fuck yeah, I got nothing else to do." And Holden's like, "Yeah, fuck it, we'll do it, but we're going to go on our terms because we actually have a ship and guns. We have some negotiating power." Dinner ends, and then we kind of cut to Holden, who's walking around the ship, and he's taking a long, slow tour. So he stands in engineering next to the fusion reactor and closes his eyes, getting used to the almost subliminal vibrations she made. If something ever went wrong with it, he wanted to feel it in his bones before any warning ever sounded. Which is quite a nice one, they say that here, because a lot of the times throughout the later books, you do get this discussion of the vibration of the ship feeling off or on. There's one scene in like a few books' time when they have to tow something, and it's quite distressing about what they're towing, and the ship is kind of complaining and moaning, and you really get that description as you go through. And it's nice you get this little nod at the very start that Holden learns how it should be. He then takes more showers because he loves a nice shower, and goes to find a cabin. And then he wanders up to go find Naomi, who's kind of in operations deck a bit higher up, messing with a transponder. So obviously, as we know in the last kind of chapter, Johnson said at one point he'll get them new transponder codes. So you have to run a transponder to like broadcast your location and stuff, so you don't crash, but also let people know where you are. And they're meant to be like you can't break with them, but the OPA have a way to mess with them, such that you can be any ship you want to be, so you can change it. And military ships can turn it on and off. And he gave them new codes to mess with their transponder, so they're going to get new codes, new ship, and no one will even know they're the old, the Tachi it was called, that would escape from the Donager. And Naomi's kind of complaining that if you try and do this on a normal civilian transponder, it immediately melts itself, because the whole point is you're not supposed to touch with them. And she's saying, if this is a military one, if you try and break this, and the consequences can be a lot bigger, would it just make the ship immediately blow up? Because they're sitting on a fusion reactor. And she says, "I've got it all set up and ready to go, but now I don't think we should throw the switch. We don't know the consequences of failure." And Holden walks to the computer and sees a program called Trans-01. He hesitates for 1 second and then presses the button, and the ship failed to vaporize. And he's like, "I guess Fred wanted us alive then." And Naomi's like, "I'm not suicidally irresponsible. I can't do this." Which is quite a nice little dynamic there. You see Holden being this kind of, he's willing to take the action and going forward. And also Naomi not having the confidence when in a lot of, particularly towards the very end of the series, she would probably be more able to do that, I think, as her development goes on. And at that point as well, you kind of learn that Holden's named the ship. He's named it the Rocinante, which is kind of the name he's picked. And Naomi says, "What the fuck does that even mean?" And he says, it means we need to go find some windmills. And that's a reference to, it's called the first ever modern novel. It's called Don Quixote. And his horse is called the Rocinante. I guess that's the idea. And the idea of Don Quixote is it's from the 1500s or something, it's some Spanish novel. It's one of the first major kind of novels, like in the modern format, I think is the idea. And I think the idea is it's like a knight out of his prime. He's got no money, and he needs to but he believes in all the ideas of chivalry, despite in the 1600s that kind of fading away with gunpowder. And he's a bit fat. He doesn't really know what he's doing, and he constantly goes to try and save the maiden. I think save a princess. It doesn't really work. And his horse is a bit old. Can't really do all the things he's up to. And the idea they're out of their depth, and I think it's meant to be funny in that way. It is a stereotype because that kind of defined it almost. And one of the big things in that, and it's a phrase called tilting at windmills, is a modern day phrase people still use. And the idea is going after imaginary foes, because apparently in one book, Don Quixote charges off in the distance with his lance ready to kill some windmills he thinks are monsters. Which is very cute. And it's nice that I think they made that reference, because otherwise, beyond this book, I don't think I've ever heard of it. So then we get the final kind of segment of this chapter, and we get a bit more background on Tycho manufacturing. Tycho, as well, I think is a fantastic name, and I would probably name a kid Tycho. I really like it, I don't know why. But Tycho Manufacturing they're the big engineering company in the belt, and one of the first things they did when they went into space, this would be dozens of years ago now, in the Expanse present day, is they captured some comets and kind of slowed them down, put them in an orbit, and turn them into space stations out in the kind of asteroid belt. And it says it'd been the most complex, difficult feat of mass-scale engineering humanity had ever accomplished until the next thing they did. And we get this kind of description of what else the company's done. So after that point, they did series where our big boy Miller is, our depressed, divorced, middle-aged man. They strapped some rockets onto that and span it up so people could live inside with gravity. They did that to Eros as well, which is another asteroid. Then they were going to start doing some floating cities on Venus, but that got dragged in lawsuits that are now 80 years old. There's probably a modern day place I work, FTI Consulting, still doing legal valuations on that. You can imagine. There are going to be space elevators and other things, but in the meantime, they built their headquarters, which was a massive floating ring station out in the belt. So about 0.5 kilometre across this big sphere. It has 15,000 people in it working with their families. And all of it's built of like rings as well. So they're constantly spinning when it's stationary. So you have gravity from the kind of the centrifugal force or whatever it is, the spinny boy. So you get stuck to the outside. So it's like having gravity. But they can all rotate such that because this big ball has an engine on the bottom, when it's going around, it can move through the universe. You get gravity in that direction as well, which is very cool. So it's this idea of like rotating, swiveling rings. And then at the other end of the engine is a load of arms. It calls them, what does it call them? I just lost the quote. Waldos, which I've never heard before, but Waldos are just mechanical arms. So you see them in like the space shuttle and stuff like that. It'd be a big mechanical arm to grab a satellite and put it in space. It's got loads of those on one end. It's a big ring with a lump at the bottom that's an engine and a load of arms on the other end. And that can rip apart a cruiser, it says, but it's designed to build the biggest spaceships in the world. In the universe, sorry. And Holden is just a jaw drops at seeing it. Not even because it's big, but just because it's the idea of 4 generations of the smartest people in the solar system have been living, working here as they help drag humanity into the outer planets almost through sheer force of will. Amos says instead, it looks like a big bug. Because Amos is a legend. And next to it, though, is a more impressive thing. And it's described as 2 kilometers long and 0.5 kilometer wide. So it's 4 times as big as the space station. It looks like a cigarette, because obviously none of the ships in the Expanse can look nice because they're all practical. And it's called the Nauvoo, which will be in the series for a long time. And it says, so the Mormons are going to ride that thing all the way to Tau Ceti. You get a bit of background. And effectively the Mormons, so that'll be Mitt Romney and co. I think he's a Mormon, isn't he? Building the biggest ever spaceship is the idea. So it's 2 kilometers long, 0.5 kilometer wide, and they're going to ride it into the next galaxy and go find their own planets. Naomi says they'll get the stars. And Amos is like, their great grandkids maybe get a star if they don't all starve to death orbiting a rock they can't use. Let's not get grandiose here. And on the side of it is a massive comms array and a really big kind of communication device. And they're talking about that must have been the one that sent the communication to the Rocinante in like the previous chapter of Holden, because they said they got a tight beam from the other side of the solar system, which is like a very, very powerful bit of technology required to do that, because it sends a very small beam of data very, very far, very, very accurate, which require low energy. And it says they probably had the volume turned down to avoid cutting a hole in us, which is some really good foreshadowing, because in later books they specifically use this comms array to carve apart ships and use it as a gun. So yeah, it's a good one. We finally get to the final aspect of the chapter. That was wrong before, and they're getting ready to go into the Tycho station. They've docked, and Holden gives everybody a gun and says you have to wear your spacesuits that have, I think, labeling on them. Oh no, you have to wear your suits, and everyone has to carry a gun. You can put it in your bag if you want, but I'll be wearing mine openly, and you've all got to do it. Amos says like fucking A, because he likes it. Naomi's not too bothered. But he's like, the Rossi's a good start towards independence. I'm taking a little piece of her with me and call it a good luck charm. And the doors open. And welcome to Tycho Station, said the butcher of Anderson Station. Call me Fred. A good boy. It's that really great line in Game of Thrones with Stannis, and it's like, I think the line goes, I am not without mercy, says he without mercy. No, famously without mercy, I think it is. But yeah, it's a good little chapter that. You kind of see them settling into their kind of family life. You get a bit of description of the ship, which will be a really big setting, I think, for easily 9 books or so. Effectively, they're home, they're kind of settling into it, but also them being a bit more confident in themselves because they've finally got a bit of firepower on their side. So yeah, a good one. I always enjoy a Holden chapter. So yeah, cheers to that, everybody, and I hope you have a great week.